The Biden administration picking up a major victory in the latest border showdown between the federal government and the state of Texas. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who ordered for this razor wire to be deployed and installed here on the southern border, is reacting to the latest news saying, quote, "This is not over. Texas razor wire is an effective deterrent to the illegal crossings Biden encourages. I will continue to defend Texas constitutional authority to secure the border and prevent the Biden administration from destroying our property." And the state of Texas has essentially kicked out Border Patrol agents from conducting their normal operations. Here is that concertina wire that's been set up by Texas officials along the southern border here in Eagle Pass. So essentially, for Border Patrol agents to come in and cut through this concertina wire, the state of Texas will have to allow those Border Patrol agents inside Shelby Park. Texas sources are telling me that right now, Texas officials will not change their posture when it comes to not allowing Border Patrol agents inside Shelby Park. So
things just got real, folks. It is going down right now at the southern border in Texas, and I do not exaggerate when I say this. We are probably dealing with one of the biggest constitutional crises in the history of our country. And assuming America is to survive, I strongly believe this is certainly something that American history students in the future, my generation's children, are going to be learning about this in history class. Because, folks, we are dealing with a situation right now for the first time in decades where we have an open standoff between a state government and a federal government, where the state of Texas has openly defied the orders of the Biden federal government, as well as the Supreme Court, having to do with the southern border. And I don't know what's going to happen next, but I figured I might as well give you the story here today. But first, before we get into that, let me say, for both YouTube and legal reasons, that this is not an endorsement of violence in any form, okay? Because obviously, we know the history of this country. The moment that we see a state in the geographical South, right, starting to defy the federal government, I know something that will come to people's minds. So let me say that I am disavowing that. I am praying that this situation reaches a peaceful resolution, but specifically the situation that I want to see is one where, yes, it's peaceful because either A, the federal government stands down and allows Texas to do its job of securing the southern border, or B, even better, the federal government steps up, finally decides to do its own constitutionally mandated duty and helps the state of Texas in securing the southern border. But what I don't want to see, regardless of what happens, is a situation where by the end of this, we still have a totally open border, and this crisis that we're seeing with illegal immigration continues to go unresolved. But with that said, if you're wondering what exactly is happening, let's start the whole story here from the beginning. So, long story short, if you have not heard, the last couple of months, Greg Abbott has been putting these razor wires and buoys at the southern border in an attempt, perhaps it's a meager attempt, I would argue. I mean, is it really helping the situation all that much? But hey, at least you're trying something, right? To stop the ridiculous flow of illegal immigration into our country that I'm sure everyone knows about, and I'm sure Joe Biden is doing absolutely nothing about. In fact, he is actively aiding and abetting that happening. So anyways, yeah, long story short, Texas put up these physical barriers. Now, in response to that, instead of thanking the state of Texas for doing their own dang job for them, or maybe just turning a blind eye to it, the focus of the Biden DOJ the last couple of months has not been to deport illegal immigrants that they're allowing into the country, right? It has instead been to try to do a lawsuit over this, to try to sue the state of Texas, making the legal argument that, hey, this is not within your authority as a state government. Immigration is controlled by the federal government, right? So they've taken this all the way to the Supreme Court. And look, my response to that the whole time has been that, yes, it is, constitutionally speaking, the job of the feds to deal with immigration, deal with border security, all of that. But the issue is that what do we do when the federal government is either inept, right? It is deemed incompetent and incapable of doing its job, or worse, it just refuses to do its job. Are we supposed to just have a wide open southern border? Because yes, I do want the federal government to do its job, but if they don't, what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to allow the invasion of our country? And so I'm making the argument, a lot of conservatives were making the legal argument that when the federal government is derelict in its duty, it is fully within the authority of the state governments to step up and take legal matters into their own hands. But obviously the Biden DOJ disagreed. They took this to the Supreme Court. And in a somewhat surprising and super disappointing decision, the allegedly conservative Supreme Court actually voted 5-4 to strike down what the state of Texas was doing and to side with Biden. I think the question now, and the question that people had going forward, is what is the state of Texas going to do about this? To tell you the truth, I fully expected them to simply just stand down, kind of just be weak about the entire situation, because some of you guys may know this. I've actually been a little bit critical of Greg Abbott the past couple of years for, in my opinion, not doing enough about the border crisis. I mean, he's doing better than Biden, obviously. He's doing better than nothing. But I never really thought he had the cojones to really take it one step farther and to, frankly, just openly defy the federal government. But to our surprise, ladies and gentlemen, we were wrong, because Greg Abbott is basically doing an Andrew Jackson at the moment. You know, if you know that famous quote, John Marshall has made his decision, referring to the Supreme Court. Now let him enforce it. Okay. You know, basically referring to a Supreme Court decision he disagreed with. That's exactly what Greg Abbott is doing, right? Jorge Ventura reports, ladies and gentlemen, that this is the response of the state of Texas. It says, Texas officials say they will, quote, hold the line after the Supreme Court says feds are allowed to cut through the razor wire on the Texas border. And here's what's interesting, right? We have not seen Border Patrol agents yet cut the razor wire in Shelby Park on the Eagle Pass border so far today. This is where they put these wires up, as you can see. Texas officials have taken control, ladies and gentlemen. Texas has taken control of Shelby Park and is not allowing Border Patrol agents to conduct their normal operations. Let's listen to Jorge Ventura kind of explain the situation. Good friend of mine, good reporter. But let's see what he's saying about this.
What it all means for the border showdown saga as it continues.
Good morning, Mark. With these just continue to get interesting here on the southern border. The Biden administration picking up a major victory in the latest border showdown between the federal government and the state of Texas. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who ordered for this razor wire to be deployed and installed here on the southern border, is reacting to the latest news, saying, quote, "This is not over. Texas razor wire is an effective deterrent to the illegal crossings Biden encourages. I will continue to defend Texas constitutional authority to secure the border and prevent the Biden administration from destroying our property." The Department of Homeland Security making the argument and telling the Supreme Court that the razor wire impacts agents' abilities to help migrants in need of help and makes it hard.
Yeah, you know what? It stops Border Patrol from doing, federal Border Patrol, from allowing them into our country. Okay? So that's what they mean. That's exactly what they mean.
For Border Patrol agents to apprehend migrants. News Nation has witnessed in several instances of migrants going through the concertina wire and agents cutting through that wire to take migrants into custody. And this legal battle over the razor wire began in October when Texas Attorney General sued the Biden administration after federal agents here in Eagle Pass used a forklift to lift the razor wire and apprehend a group of migrants. Now, this is where things are going to get interesting, Marky. Right now, we are inside Shelby Park. This is a park where it's a known hotspot for illegal crossings, and the state of Texas has essentially kicked out Border Patrol agents from conducting their normal operations. Here is that concertina wire that's been set up by Texas officials along the southern border here in Eagle Pass. So, essentially, for Border Patrol agents to come in and cut through this concertina wire, the state of Texas will have to allow those Border Patrol agents inside Shelby Park. Texas sources are...
Yeah, so that's, again, where this situation is getting super spicy, super interesting, right? Not only is the state of Texas saying, hey, we're just going to nullify the decision of the Supreme Court, we're not going to get rid of the wires, but you have the Texas officials, and folks, I don't know if it was talked about in this story at the time, but also, as we can see here, right, the Texas National Guard are going to the border, and at the moment, again, I don't know exactly how this is going to end, what's going to happen. Again, I want this to settle peacefully, but we're in a situation where they are not currently allowing federal agents into the area, right? Basically, the state of Texas themselves have seized control of this border crossing for themselves and are actually not allowing the feds to come into it. So, again, I want it to end peacefully, okay? But that's what's happening at the moment, okay? The state of Texas is taking a serious step up, to this whole thing. So anyways, I want to read for you the statement that Greg Abbott put out here today. And this was his argument as to why he's doing this and what's going on. So from Governor Greg Abbott, January 24th, 2024, he says, the federal government has broken the compact between the United States and the states. The executive branch of the U.S. has a constitutional duty to enforce laws protecting states, including the immigration laws on the books right now. By the way, that's the exact argument I made. Greg Abbott clearly agrees. President Biden has refused to enforce those laws and has even violated them. The result is that he has smashed records for illegal immigration. Despite having been put on notice in a series of letters, one of which I delivered to him by hand, President Biden has ignored Texas's demand that he perform his constitutional duties. He goes on, President Biden has violated his oath to faithfully execute immigration laws enacted by Congress. Instead of prosecuting immigrants for the federal crime of illegal entry, President Biden has sent his lawyers into federal courts to sue Texas for taking action to secure the border. President Biden has instructed his agencies to ignore federal statutes that mandate the detention of illegal immigrants. This is correct. The effect is to illegally allow their en masse parole into the United States. By wasting taxpayers' dollars to tear open Texas's border security infrastructure, President Biden has enticed illegal immigrants away from the 28 legal entry points around this state's southern border, bridges where nobody drowns, and into the dangerous waters of the Rio Grande. Under President Biden's lawless border policies, more than 6 million illegal immigrants have crossed into our southern border in just 3 years. That is more than the population of 33 states in this country. This illegal refusal to protect the United States has inflicted unprecedented harm on the people across the United States. James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and the other visionaries who wrote the U.S. Constitution foresaw that states should not be left to the mercy of a lawless president who does nothing to stop external threats like cartels smuggling millions of illegal immigrants across the border. This is why the framers included both Article 4, which promises that the federal government shall protect each state against invasion. And that is so true. What is going on right now, folks, is an invasion. And Article 1, Clause 3, which acknowledges that the state's sovereign interest in protecting their borders, folks. The failure, okay, you basically get the point. But yeah, Greg Abbott is openly saying, again, the Andrew Jackson line, if Justice Roberts has made his decision, now let him come and enforce it. He is now defying what the Supreme Court said. And listen, again, I don't want this to end violently in any form. Frankly, to tell you the truth, I don't think it will, but just to say that, right? But I will say this, it is true that you don't want this to be where we are as a country, right? Because people will say this, and we'll address that in a second. Yes, it is sort of a dangerous precedent for states to be defying the federal government and specifically federal courts. However, this is also a crisis situation, okay? We are dealing with an invasion at the southern border. That's exactly what it is. It's not just a crisis, it is an invasion. And again, if the federal government's not going to do anything about it, and if they're going to actively circumvent the ability of state governments to do it, then it is time for red states to take those matters into their own hands. It's time to peacefully and legally, of course, stand up to the federal government. Okay? So I 100%, again, I'm not saying to break any laws. I'm making constitutional and legal arguments about this. I don't want to see it end in violence. However, I got to give a lot of props to Greg Abbott for doing this, because this takes a lot of guts. He could get in serious trouble for this. I have no idea. I don't know how this is going to end. But he took a very brave decision here to say to the people of his state, to the people of Texas, if the federal government is not going to do its job, then I will do their job for them. Okay? So that's exactly what you see happening here. And here's a video, as you can see, of, like I said, Texas National Guard being deployed to the southern border. And that's what we're dealing with right now. So I think it's pretty obvious, folks, as you can see, how this poses such a significant constitutional crisis. What is going to happen? I have no idea. You got to wonder, what is Joe Biden going to do about this? Is he going to do the Dwight Eisenhower where he sends in federal troops to break the stalemate with the state guard? I don't know, right? I really don't know. At the same time, does he want to risk that optically? You know, it is election year. It wouldn't necessarily be the best look to be dealing with a nullification crisis. You could just kind of ignore it, right? And especially when you're the one who's in the wrong. You know, most Americans agree you're not handling the border well. And it's like, we are going to use the U.S. military or federal agents to enforce open borders. Is that the best look for Joe Biden? Frankly, I have no idea. But like I said again, I personally, in my humble opinion, fully agree with what Greg Abbott is doing, but I do want to address the arguments we are hearing from some right-wingers, and I don't want to single this guy out, okay? I don't really know this guy. I'm not here to poke at him specifically, but unfortunately, he is going to have to be something of a representation of the counter-argument here. This guy went on to say, imagine the roles were reversed. You know, basically saying, hey, well, if red states can defy the federal government, then that's a bad precedent. Because what about when blue states start defying the federal government? And it's like, yes, do I technically agree you don't want to be in a position as a country where states and people are just nullifying the decisions of federal courts? No, ideally, you don't want to reach that point. But it's not Texas's fault that we're there, is it? Anyways, he goes on to say, imagine Trump is president and is stopping illegal immigrants. Now California and New Mexico seize their borders with Mexico and let everyone through. Is that legal? That's what Texas is arguing they have the right to do by forbidding Border Patrol access. My friend Daniel, my good friend that I don't know anything about, but let me just respond to you by saying this. First of all, I don't want to hear this talk about imagine if the roles were reversed, which on that note, you literally did the meme, right? If anyone's ever seen the meme, right? Here lies conservatism. Wow. Imagine if the situation was reversed, right? Because this is what some weak conservatives always have a tendency to say. Instead of standing up for themselves, instead of trying to actually reverse the roles, they just stand there every time we're getting destroyed politically and say, well, imagine if the roles were reversed. Imagine if it was right-wingers doing this. It's like, okay, that's not really going to save us in this situation, is it? But forget that for a moment. The roles already have been reversed, my friend. They have. And this is very ironic, right? You say, imagine next time if Trump is president and he's stopping illegal immigrants, what if California and New Mexico don't do anything or they defy him on that? Newsflash, I don't know how old you are, buddy, but they already did. They already did. If you'll remember back during the Trump presidency, that's why I'm saying it's not even Texas who started this, right? You had deep blue states like California declaring themselves as sanctuary states and refusing to comply with ICE and federal agencies to deport illegal immigrants. They were actually actively sheltering, in some cases, criminal illegals who were up for deportation. So that's already been done. I don't want to hear this talk imagine if the roles were reversed when they've already been reversed, okay? Texas, yes, is it slightly different? Sure. But principally speaking, they are not doing anything at its core that's different from what blue states did with sanctuary states with President Trump. So if you want to talk about setting dangerous precedents in this country in terms of nullification and, states not listening to the feds, blame California, blame New York, don't blame Texas, okay? But even further, if this is your response to watching the United States get invaded, which it is, it's getting invaded, then you are an unserious person, okay? You are. That's your first response? Imagine if the roles were reversed. No. Your first response should be, this is a crisis situation. Stop the invasion immediately. Okay? But instead, you sit around here from your, I don't know where he is, but his ivory tower, basically, and say, well, imagine if the roles were reversed. Do you live in Texas? Are you on the front lines of having to deal with this stuff? Because if not, I don't want to hear the complaints about the roles being reversed. It's just so silly. So yeah, in conclusion here, folks, to reiterate, Texas now openly defying the federal government when it comes to immigration. I agree with that from a legal principle of nullification in terms of, the federal government and what they're doing. I do not encourage violence. I don't want this to end in any type of bloodshed or anything bad, okay? So just to be clear about that. But I do agree with Texas saying that we're not going to listen to the feds. I think that's what needs to be done. It's frankly long overdue. And yeah, we just got to see what happens next. I have no idea. Just considering how weak Biden is about many things, I could very much see, the federal government just not doing anything about this, just kind of turning a blind eye. But at the same time, I mean, who knows, right? We know how important this border crisis and the open borders are right now to their plan for the country. Let me just say that. So they may be pretty vicious in defending that. Who knows? With that said, folks, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, Alpha Moves Only, God bless, have a very good day, and peace.